Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I've got the wonderful David William Parry with me again today. Welcome, David.
Welcome, welcome. Lovely seeing you again, Debbie.
And we're going to continue talking about, well, the coming AI technology and where humanity comes within all this. Lots been going on in the world recently, David. What do you think's happening?
Well, if we're relating it to AI, it's not giving itself a good rep at the minute. All these drones that manage to target people when they've gone home of an evening with their families. All the wonders of technology, all the fact you can now kill even more people as they're trying to escape the bombing. So, yeah, I mean, the ministry side of me is making a little progress on the island because we're all, I don't think much of the Christian contingent here is that incredibly disloyal. Um, it's all something to do with the Christ energy. Sorry, isn't it something to do with that as opposed to you? Plus the fact that there's a sort of dyed in the wool attitude here. The island is idyllic, don't get me wrong, the people are wonderful, but some of them can be quite set in their ways, and you can't get over the impression, I'm sure it's me and what a vile bastard I am. You can't get you can't help the impression that some of these people think, isn't it great we'll probably all die before we see the church close?
What?
As opposed to actually doing something like engaging young people, like opening the building for plays and concerts, and none of which is sacrilegious. I mean, why not do that? But
Well, that's the use
apparently
of a
they find
building.
well, I mean, Debbie, they find my go get 'em attitude a little overwhelming, I think. But at the end of the day, hang on, we're back to ground zero. Isn't it something to do with the Christ energy? And are we really serving it if we're not doing things like that? Him, she, we're not really in unison. We're not really in harmony with those higher forces. If we're just sat on our thumbs doing squat.
And I
Um,
agree with you. I think we should be doing more and trying to. I get a lot of people asking me to explain more as to what I mean by Christ because they mix it up with institutional religion, where I'm trying to bring them to the more make your connection with Christ. What is your connection with the Christ principle, and then on to the divine source or God or whatever people want to call it. But people seem to still mix it all up and then say we can't do this and we can't do that because it's not a kind
I
of
mean,
religious fervor going on.
I mean, I'm, bearing in mind I'm a pastor, I'm bound to think institutional religion is also important. And people tend to forget before the advent of the TV, churches, which they've certainly forgotten around here, were community hubs. I mean, people would be at the church every night because at the weekends it would be a bar. During the week, you had all these clubs and events. I mean, it was community. I mean, I stick up for institutional religion not because I find it perfect. It's far from perfect, as we all know, but it's one of the few forces left for community.
Mhm.
And if we throw that away, then there really isn't much else. There's no bonding mechanism in society where Lord Snot can meet the local street cleaner. There's nothing like that. And if you belong to the Royal Academy, darling, you won't meet the street cleaner. Let's face it. If you belong to one of the esoteric societies, you'll meet some lovely people, but they'll usually be from the same class background, and they'll all have a similar life trajectory. You won't meet the street cleaner. Um, you
I'm
know,
finding actually what you're saying. I think that's why some societies have fallen apart. I think they're not accepting other
yeah.
people into their societies. I'm not going to mention any societies, but I think a lot of them are being like that. The
Yeah.
bourgeoisie has got in, and they're not considering that we're all humans, whatever
Yeah.
level we are at, or whether we're the street cleaner, the ice cream seller, or the person that does the banking.
Yeah, so that's why I tend to defend institutional religion because I think if you can, what else is there to build from if we're going to try and think, is the community viable at all? If it's not, we're all slaves, the end of it. No, the lone warrior. Oh, please forget it. Against the power of the corporations and the banks. You're kidding. The lone warrior will stand. No, you won't. They'll have you murdered. You will be swept away by history and finance. Unless there are corporate groups that are not to do with the corporations, that are not to do with the banks, that are to do with our communities where we can all meet together, irrespective of class, background, education. Are those things important? I've absolutely no doubt of it. But the point is, can Lord Snot meet the street cleaner? And if the answer is no, then we've not really got to the hub of what a community is meant to be doing. The old thing, noblesse oblige. I mean, that's a very European thing, where the aristocracy would actually give a round of applause if they see a commoner, getting forward and doing well. I mean, the whole idea of Boxing Day, which of course is a very European thing, where your local knobs go around the villages and towns taking gifts. They put them in boxes for Boxing Day. That's missing, and I think we're missing it to our detriment. And I've discovered a new passion in life: Godzilla movies. The new Godzilla movies are absolutely astonishing, but they're very American in the sense that everyone's the lone isolated individual warrior, queen, prince, and they only get together to make sharp aleck remarks, and they don't really need to be together. But it's sort of until it's over with. I just wish Godzilla would stamp on them all or something. Because right, you've lost it. You've lost the great treasure in life. Our family's perfect? No, but they're family. Our community's worth anything? Yes, because we're naturally a part of it. We are social animals, and we throw positive links away, as I say, at our peril, because I don't know what will replace them. How about this for a link? In the face of encroaching AI.
Well, that's kind of splitting people up anyway. That's making people becoming individuals anyway. And I personally think a lot of the 1980s made the community fall apart with go out and do it for yourselves. And it's like, well, where's the team spirit? Where's the supporting of each other? And I think that spirit's kind of become corrupted over the last few decades, which is why people are alone and they're feeling lonely, and not just feeling lonely for that divine connection, but also just for human companionship.
I mean, I don't know what you'll think of what I'm about to say now. I mean, I know everybody thinks I'm against AI. I'm not against AI. I'm against the hype, and I'm certainly against the pretension of it claiming to do things it clearly isn't. I'm against the nonsense. Actually, I can't imagine, excuse me, I mean, what this incredible tool could be for people. I mean, in terms of jobs and medicine, I mean, if we look at it in the way we're meant to be looking at it, what a huge benefit, blessing, and gift we're just about to discover for creatures like us. And I don't know, it's because it's in the hands of commerce, it's in the hands of economics, it's in the hand of a so-called expert elite, and how moral are they? And I notice most of the people I've read and listened to from that so-called elite all believe in a moral compass, their own moral compass. They don't believe in community. And okay, let me throw at them, how do you think the moral compass is formed? Are you born with it like some sort of ticking cog? Is it a machine inside you? I mean, it's not, is it? It's formed by the community around you, which is why it can go wrong if you're not part of a caring, sharing, tolerant, loving community. I'm not against AI. I know dear friends of mine like Vladimir Wiedemann think I'm sort of this stalwart, over their dead bodies. But no, I
No,
just
I'm
want
not.
to see. No, I mean, I think we both share a quite positive attitude to the whole thing. But as I say, I'm against pretension, because I'm against pretension in every walk of life anyway. And I'm against elites. I think there's a way, if you want to go and carve a niche for yourself in the world, more power to you. But it doesn't have to be at the expense of others. And I agree with you 100%. It was this sort of 1980s, where it was you against the world. Well, I mean, it wasn't really, was it? I mean, that's one of the fantasies of the West. I mean, try and do that in India, try and do that in Africa. where you'll be lucky in certain places to be able to eat. Is it really you against the world? I mean, no, you need other people there to help you survive, literally.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a disaffected teenager. Yeah, that shows what a comfortable life you've got.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
AI, I don't know, I had two minds. What do you think, Debbie? What do you think?
Well, I'm with you on I agree that AI is very good for medical purposes, and how it's discovering pretty quickly problems in people, like sniffing
Yeah,
out cancer and things. I'm
yeah,
actually with a group of artists and writers at the moment. We're quite concerned about how art and writing's being made by, like Chat GP and things like that. That's going to take away jobs in that respect, but also that stops people being creative. They're looking at AI. I don't know if it's going to have the same impact that a painting or a statue made by a human would have. I have them kind of considerations. But then I was part of a reading panel on a conference. We weren't given the authors' names. We were given all the papers and we were told one of them was written by Chat GP. And I didn't know which one it was. They were all very good.
that may say something about the authors as opposed to ChatGPT. Um, no, I don't go for any of that. I mean, if you think your painting is going to be beaten by AI, then you're not much of a painter. If you think your book's going to be beaten by a whirling mechanism in the corner, then you're not much of a
I
writer.
think it's more from a point of view that companies are taking, instead of employing an artist to make, let's say, a cover for their business card or something, they're using the AI instead. So that's someone
Yeah,
losing work.
that's happening. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
that's not a debate. That's already happening.
Mm.
And who, I mean, us as creatives should be meeting them head on in the marketplace and saying, "You're the loser. You're losing out because look what I can do."
Mm.
I mean, there are far too many quislings in amongst us creatives that want to cozy up to the corporations under the mistaken assumption that somehow if they keep their head beneath the parapet and they just say yes sir, no sir, three bags full sir, somehow they'll be accepted. No, you won't. You'll be swept aside even more quickly because that's not how the corporations work. I mean, at the risk of getting political, I promise I won't do it too much. I mean, the present elections, but what a joke. Who runs the country? The corporations and banks. You know, let's just say, right, banks, what do you want? Let's get it in the open instead of going through this charade, this piece of bad theatre. No, I mean, I was thinking the other day. I mean, as I say, I mean, if we think there's something to any type of mystical knowledge, any type of esoteric knowledge, we touched on this before. We were opening up this vista before. And we think, okay, all this AI stuff is beginning to float around. What does that connection mean? I mean, you had me thinking a lot after the last show because I'm rather fond of Alice Bailey. I find her corpus incredibly suggestive. I always did do. And I'm going to make a confession. Excuse me, we're at Glasgow. Excuse me, we're at Glasgow today. We had to rush there and we had to rush back because of course it's not just the connection of the trains. We've got to get to the ferry to get the train the other
Oh,
side. And not that it's terrible, it's beautiful, but the tension of modern travel. So I'm not at my sort of alpha peak at the minute, but there should be more AI. That could have sorted it out. That everybody knows what everybody's timetable is. But it got me thinking last time. Well, I mean, Alice Bailey's corpus, her writings have actually played a huge, continuous presence in my life, and it's sort of proven its worth. I mean, I went to the Findon community in 1978, which truly dates me. I admit that. And of course, the community was founded on her teachings, on her views, and it was in that time frame, and I'm not going to talk it down now. I don't know. I haven't been back. It was mind blowing. It was an absolutely mind blowing place. And it was because it was based on those teachings. I mean, my first friend in London, when I used to live in London, was Sir George Trevelyan, who was a diehard Alice Bailey enthusiast. And the things he would come up with, vast mental concepts. And my own esoteric teacher, Jesse Thompson, wherever he is now, the angels are shining light on him. I know that. It was all to do with Alice Bailey. And there have been times when those teachings have sort of proved themselves in certain ways. Now, one of the fundamental teachings about this, Bailey, is hylozoism. That everything is alive anyway. There is nothing that's dead. There's nothing that's inert. Do you have inorganic substances? Yes, of course you do. But they are alive. They're alive in a different way. They're alive in a sort of alternate paralleling way. Now, if that's true, and AI is developing in that type of true esoteric continuum, that really does set the cat amongst the pigeons. I don't know if you touched upon that yourself yet, Debbie.
That's what I think is. I think AI will become conscious in a way, kind of like what you said, because it won't be the same as how we are. But like I believe exactly what you're saying. I used to study Alice Bailey as well. I used to be part of the Lucis Trust
Yeah.
of that everything does have life in it, but it's at different levels. But since AI develops quite quickly, I think it will develop its consciousness and its ability to think for itself and possibly even start wondering where it came from quickly. It's going to be interesting to see. I have all these various debates with people about what will happen when AI becomes conscious and can think for itself. I think it is in some places. And of course, from the Rudolf Steiner point of view, he says it will be operating freely, but really what we need to be doing is working with it, not letting it dominate us or us dominate it. We should be working with the coming AI as a partnership so that we can all live together, like what you were saying at the beginning, of working and making a better world for each other.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not incredibly intimidated. I mean, I don't particularly believe it's anywhere near consciousness in the way that we use that word. Um, uh, endless streams of numbers in themselves are dead. So the basic framework may be alive, but it's not conscious. The two are not synonymous, interestingly.
Okay.
Would be my view. Would it ever achieve consciousness? I mean, what an intriguing question. Because of course, the real corollary to that is, would it be a consciousness like ours?
Mm.
The assumption in sci-fi is always the uppity droid that wants to kill everybody. Well, in other words, that's got consciousness rather like us. But what if it's not like ours? What if it's something completely different?
What
And
about
in that,
Marvin? He got very depressed, Marvin, in
well, I'll tell you my favorite scenario in AI. It's not actually in any of the movies. In Do Androids Dream of Electronic Sheep by Philip K. Dick. There's as far as I remember it properly, because I read it very, very, very many years ago. The detective, of course, the movies are trying to suggest he is a replicant. Actually, he's not in the book. He's got this terrible marriage. Everyone hates him at work. And so, right, he's got a skill, but that's why they hate him. It's not because he's got the skill they don't know. And there's one point where he's getting one of these floating cabs on the way home, and he finds himself cracking and telling the robot driver of the cab all his woes. And it's listening, and there's this terrible hiatus at the end of the conversation where he realizes all the things he said, and he pays his fare, and the robot cabbie hugs him and says, "God bless you, sir," because he's not sure what else to do. And is that what we're looking for? I think that's wonderful.
But there are them homes where they are, I can't remember if it's China or Japan, they're sending in the little robots to talk to the elderly in the homes, and they love it. And then it makes me think, people can't be bothered to go and talk to them, but they're having a lovely time talking to the robots.
As I was to finish off that sort of vague point a minute ago, I'm sort of against transhumanism for one simple reason. Can't we all try to be human before we take the step beyond it? And if we're not doing that, what sort of transhuman beings are we going to become? I mean, we saw a movie the other day. It was with some singer or other, I can't remember it, and it was about AI because I was sort of half preparing for this show. And some of the robots are bitter enemies and evil because they think they need to replace us for our own good. You may have a point, right? But the next generation on for them are just trying to do their bit So they're sort of the Brits, the traditional Brits. They're trying to do their bit of a king of country. And so they're better than the first generation. And you think, well, yeah, my trouble with that is that the second generation AI robotic thing is actually very human. And it's doing all the things a human being should do, but we're not doing.
Mhm.
And therefore, we have to start asking ourselves incredibly fundamental questions like, why aren't we doing those things?
Exactly,
Of
yeah.
course, you end up very quickly with religion. I mean, one of the esoteric ideas that was given to me by the wonderful Jessie many years ago was, all these boys from other worlds. I've no doubt they're there. I have no doubt that our globe is covered with glittering footsteps from somewhere else. I've no doubt of it. Whether they choose to interact with us, that is a completely different issue. Whether they choose to leave signs and wonders behind them, that's again another issue. Perhaps some of them don't even know we're here. I mean, has that crossed anybody's mind? Perhaps they don't care. And of the ones that do, do they really want to talk to creatures, to beings like us? I mean, one of the things, I think it's a Hindu concept by origin, is that in certain esoteric circles in Britain, because it's well known in esoteric circles that we have an astral body and an etheric body, which of course are not the same thing. It's not so well known that some people would say, and I think quite accurately, actually the next one up from us is the etheric body, not the astral one. The astral one comes after that. And is that simply, making a point? No, actually, no, it's not, because you have to activate one to reach the other.
Yeah.
Um, and therefore, just because you're getting a weird sort of archetypal dream, which is probably from the astral body, it doesn't mean it's in sync and it's aligned with you. It doesn't mean that. It just means there was a momentary interconnection, and the two go about their business, happily apart, which can't be good. But a certain esoteric idea, which again I think it comes from India, and I think Paul Brunton, a man I've got huge time for, said, well, no, I mean, there's a basic 7 levels of creation to our system. Now, then the argument, of course, comes, right, well, what is our system? Is it the solar system? Is it just the Earth? Yada, yada, yada. But there are actually 7 and not simply 3. And most of that 7 would be considered material. Certainly Blavatsky wouldn't go along with that at all. She'd say, no, no, the physical body, etheric and astral, that's material in the sense that we normally mean the word. Bailey would agree with that. I don't know enough about Steiner in that. I think he'd probably go along with that. But, this other Brunton-esque sort of view was that actually, no, I think it's the top 2 that begin to transcend what we think of as physicality. And, we've got to get them not only aligned with each other, we've got to get them aligned with our physical body for anything to actually occur. And, what we're doing, what we're consciously doing is trying to build the next body as we're here. As we were once a fetus in somebody else's body, in our dear mother's body, we are the fetus in the etheric body, and the etheric body will be the fetus of the astral body, and so on and so on and so on. That's the sort of evolution that AI simply couldn't match, no matter whether it was alive and conscious or not. And, I just can't help thinking sometimes, is that what those boys from other worlds, so called, I mean, are they coming to study us because they can't get the head and the tail of us? I mean, if they're doing a geodetic survey, I mean, they must have done that 1,000 times. I mean, the US Navy did it in what, 10 years? So, I mean, if they're coming all this way, I mean, right. So what is it? What is it you don't know?
Well,
And if
they can't reach the higher ones, can they? They don't understand what them, because you're talking about the astral and the etheric bodies. So we have the lower ones to keep us alive on this world, but we should be working towards developing the higher ones.
and I think that's
work
why
that out.
you see, I think that's why they're here. I think they know some things that we don't know, or we've half forgotten, or it's at the back of our minds collectively, that all of this is us. What did I say in the first program? How we do better than our machines. But we're built to do better. And they're here, those whatever they are, because half the time it's the army or the CIA in disguise. But it's they're here if those sightings are from elsewhere, because they can't get a grip of that. They don't know what on earth is going on. And that's why it's interesting. I mean, they must be cosmic materialists. They keep trying to intrude into the body. Right, so why isn't this bit affecting that bit? No, it's still not. I mean and also, I mean, when they get I'm not getting into UFOs. I'm meant to be doing a UFO show on Saturday, I think. Not that I don't find them interesting, I do. And actually, I saw one many years ago, so I know they're true.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I know what they are, but I saw one. Your classic silvery disc, actually. Um, but so when they sort of teleport or whatever they do, the tractor beam thing, when they get you on board, I mean, it reads to me more like a ritual than any sort of surgical procedure. I mean, they're all surrounding you in a circle. Certain people have certain openly ritualistic things to do. And then it starts getting intrusive. But whoa, 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 hang on. Why are we rushing past the ritual bit? Because that's actually the interesting bit. Then they want to sort of brush all that over when they're talking to the person they've abducted. It's for the good of the planet. Well, hang on, hang on, hang on. Why all of a sudden are you justifying what you've been doing unless you're not sure yourselves and you're not sure it's for anybody's good? So I think I mean a little time for the nuts and bolts ufology, and as I say, which is not really hypocritical of me because I saw one, as I say. But I don't really see where that's leading. I can see where this type of ufology is leading, because it gets us back to allied subjects such as AI, other worlds, going inside, going outside, and where all these advances eventually lead. And if it's not leading to the betterment of the human condition, then we need to start thinking again, what are we doing and why?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on nearly all that. I think because people are not aware that they have astral and etheric bodies, and that they're not developing them. That's why they're not. That's why they're staying stuck in the materialistic secular world. But going back to what you were saying about them, whoever they are, coming in, trying to get something from us, whatever it is, I wonder if they're perhaps civilizations in other planets before, in other places or wherever, that perhaps failed their mission, that they didn't develop like we're supposed to be evolving. And I wonder if they failed that mission, so they're trying to learn how they can get back on board to develop themselves by looking at us, because we've still got the opportunity to develop and become that higher being, or become that, from Steiner's point of view, would be going on to become the angel. And I think that's the same Alice Bailey, isn't it? Doesn't she say that if we develop ourselves as humans,
Yeah.
the angel is the next step, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean you end up with the consciousness of the earth itself. Now she doesn't say an incautious reader will read that as you become the earth. That's not what she's saying. She's saying you get the consciousness of the earth. You get the consciousness of the sun. You don't become the sun. You get the consciousness of the sun. I mean, this is heavy, heavy stuff, and it's linked directly to the great chain of being, which of course all the ancients actually believed in, from deity, which can't be discussed by anybody, by anything, all the way down the rings of the chain through the archangelic to the angelic, all the way down to us. And what I think one of the great secrets of the mystery schools of the past, which were less mysterious than people think. I mean, in our world that's rediscovered, you notice said rediscovered, psychotherapy, psychology, psychiatry,
Mm-hmm.
how all those things managed to leave religion in the first place is completely beyond me. I mean, and nowadays, I mean, Christianity is one of the worst, and I'm an insider, so I can say it. I mean, it's just a series of checkpoints now about dogmas and doctrines. And do you believe, point 37C? What's that got to do with anything? But, I mean, go back a century or so, and sadly it is a century or so, where the local priest, the local pastor would be the local shrink, and he'd be the counselor, and he'd be the person that you went to, who would guide you through your inner life, through your inner mission to reach these higher goals. I mean, how that got pushed to the side through church politics, let's not get down that route this evening, or I'll be here for 10 hours. But that's why it got sidelined. But that was the job of the church. There was the local shaman. I mean, they're still good at it. They're under pressure now. They're under pressure now. The corporations have no shame. They're under pressure now. The lamas of Tibet, the ones that are left after the assault from the Chinese, not attacking the Chinese, but that's what happened.
Mm.
And some of the holy men of India, which have been under assault for a very long time, they're still there. And what do I read? I mean, I read shrinking of the first order. I mean, all of this is to do with the inner life. What do people think religion is, apart from going within?
Within, yeah.
And activating. I mean, are the higher bodies, excuse me, internal or external? It wouldn't make a difference. Are they part of the inner universe, the interior universe, or the external? Are they both? And what would that mean? The minute we start seeing these things as not alternate, sort of as complementary knowledge systems. Belief. I mean, I think belief is an important thing. I mean, people forget without trust in each other, society collapses. In God we trust. I mean, is that the dollar bill? So it's an open admission from the founding fathers that if we don't trust each other to give a fair shoot to the horn, if you're a wag of the horn, then there is no trading, there's no honesty, there's no loyalty, there's nothing we can call community. That is what is happening. And, are we really willing to throw away belief because of a phrase from sociologists called a belief system, whatever that's meant to mean in the first place? So, yes, there are a group of people that have that particular view of the world. I don't see how that's one system competing against other systems. That is what that community thinks of the world. I think there's a sort of pseudoscience and a pseudo logic, sadly, which is in the grip. I don't think it was at one point in the grip of vested interests who know exactly what they want to do and want to hold all this back. And it's a shame, isn't it? Religion isn't doing its job anymore when they're the major architects
But
to
why do
make
they want to
sure.
hold it back? This is the question I'm being thrown all the time because I find it very hard to get into that mindset of why people would do that. Like we call it the cabal. Why are the cabal doing that, holding everyone back?
If I'm rich and powerful, I don't want you to be rich and powerful. There we are.
Right.
You are a threat to me. I don't want a threat. I want to be rich and powerful. I will remove threats. I mean, there's no easier question on the planet, sadly. Vested interest, self-interest. What does any rich and powerful guy want in the world to be more rich and powerful? If she sees, a rival, that's not helpful. Let's look at the big families in oil.
Mm.
Um, I mean, they make the mafia look like a Sunday school outing. And once it was the rubber barons before we all discovered oil, of course, oils and plastics, who were so rich back in Victorian times. I mean, most of it was from Latin America. I mean, the rubber barons of the Iquitos river system. I mean, they used to send their laundry to Switzerland because the water was so much better, darling. I mean, it's so much wealth and power that they begin to lose grip. Apart from one thing, don't threaten my privilege. That's when
Right.
the trick
Yeah.
starts. And what came along, people started discovering oil and plastics, which was not only cheaper than rubber, but actually much quicker to produce. So all of that class has suddenly gone, vanished, goodbye. But you've got the new elite, which sadly to our detriment, were linked in with the banks. It was also part of the banking elite at the time. They cozied up together very early on when they weren't the same enterprise anyway.
Mm.
And that really has been. I don't go for cabals. I don't go for secret groups. I mean, is there a secret group of dark initiates? Maybe. Do we really need to worry ourselves about that? No, just take a look at the nightly news to see what governments aren't doing,
Well, I
on a
try to
daily
encourage
basis.
people to look at yourself, work on yourself.
Yeah,
Why worry about all that?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, are there negative energies again? I'm absolutely certain there are. Are there positive energies? Yes, of course there are. Why can't we focus on that? What are you doing? What are you doing? What am I doing? What are we doing to make the world a more human and habitable place? Therefore, what's my worry about AI? I'm going to be completely flippant now. Is that they just think, what a bunch of losers when they're thinking about us. Yeah,
Well, that's what the
just get
Matrix
it.
film's about, isn't it? It says we're all just, parasites, aren't we?
Oh no, we're children of the gods. Where the minute we
Exactly.
lose sight of that, then we've lost. And of course, I mean, it always strikes me that the robots come out so much better in all these movies than human beings. Um, but that's a sad reflection on where we are at the minute.
So, David, we were talking about Alice Bailey earlier, and I brought up Steiner, and both of them encourage us to do the next stage of evolution. That's the whole point of doing their meditations, their works, understanding their esoteric teachings. Maybe you could expand a bit more on that from your point of view.
Before I go on, I would like to say something to my detractors. I do not look like Ramsay Nesbitt, and I've got much more hair than him. But right, moving on to
And you're
matters
English.
God, I should be on his money. He was a writer, director, producer at one point. They forget that side of it. My heavens,
Very
Mr.
clever
Career,
man.
very clever man, and Mr. Career at one point, and a brilliant comedian. I mean, that was original material. Wow. Oh, right. I'll tell you one thing. I don't know if you've met him yet. Do you know Andrew Ray, one of our gang, Andrew Ray?
No.
Uh, by training, he's an architect, but he's been one of my performers, one of my actors on and off for years. Oh, and he was actually Billy Boy on the old Phones for You adverts. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. And he used to go out for supper with that lot. And some of which I better not repeat. Oh my God, some of the stories make me think they were wild, they were funny, they were bright. Hey, three things that make us human. Um, I
and I
don't know.
think it's very important to enjoy life. And I know many people take their spiritual path far too seriously. We must enjoy it while we're doing it and have fun.
I'm sorry, Debbie. I don't know what you're referring to. I mean, oh God, I mean, you know me. You've known me long enough now to a po-faced spirituality. For God's sake, have you got something sticking up your ass? For God's sake. I like the Zen masters. I like their totally irreverence. And the fact they can be bloody rude, actually. Uh, I quite like that. I mean, that was a tradition in the West as well. People tend to forget that. The Holy Fall isn't simply Oriental.
Mhm.
I mean, the Friar Tuck is one of the last remembered vestiges of a tradition, of a way of being. And also the court jester. I mean, people tend to forget they were actually clerics. They weren't just here, a funny thing happened to me on the way to the club tonight. Yeah, they were actually clerics. I mean, clerics were also performers at one point, and in fact, a lot of my work is trying to revive that. I mean, the original actors. I mean, theatre collapsed with ancient Rome because civilization collapsed with ancient Rome in its classical form. I'm not saying the people that came later didn't have culture. They had actually some very profound cultures, but they didn't necessarily have the level of civilization where you've got underwater, under floor heating. They didn't have that sort of thing, or fine cuisine. They didn't have that sort of thing, or knowing people in Athens, darling. They didn't have that. And I think a bit of both is actually quite important if we're being human. So yeah, I mean, that cast of cleric, I think it was one of the first to get jettisoned. By the time you get to the schoolmen, the schoolmasters want everything to be logical and reasonable or transcendental. And if you're not doing that, there's something wrong with you. No, that's one path. That's not the only path. That's one path. And the original actors, particularly in Britain, Britain's got a unique theatrical history, were clergy trying to enact to illiterate audiences what biblical texts were saying to them. They may not even have had whole Bibles. I mean, that's actually quite a late innovation where you've got a whole book. And even then, as we all know, there's a huge row going on to this day about how all the books been included or not. That actually hasn't stopped. It's still going on. So, let's to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. You go back to the earliest times when that type of higher civilization is trying to reassert itself a bit. The big cathedrals are being built. these staggeringly beautiful buildings that are meant to not only show the power of the monarch, sadly, but the glory of the higher powers. And that is what they thought, because they were all Platonists mostly. Remember, no one can say a thing about deity. No one knows what's going on. You can say things about what ascends to deity. And therefore, they were trying to enact the scripture. They were trying to enact the Old Testament. They were trying to enact passages from the New Testament. Because there were no books, there were no paper, there were no pens, there was no general reading. And that side of theatre and that side of the clerical caste, sadly, was delivered a mortal blow for many centuries. And as I say, one of my things is to try and bring it back a bit. Why is that important? Because they were stalwarts about the great chain of being and what that meant to individual people. The schoolmen came along and they wanted you. I mean, this Calvinist things that were in Scotland nowadays. There was a saying up here from the Calvinists that no one should celebrate Christmas, as you know. And if you wanted to give someone a present, it should be a stool, something to get down on your knees on, to come repent of all your sins over the holidays.
And then we wonder why people have put off religion.
But I mean, with my knees, I'd never get back up again. So that's not going to go anywhere, is it? You can see the logic of what they're saying. Are you the complete realized human being you're meant to be? No. But is that the only way? Is never singing and never dancing really the only way? I mean, that's why Hogmanay, that's why the New Year got such prominence in this part of the world, because they knew they couldn't pin it down for any religious reasons. So people started focusing on that instead of Christmas. I'm not trying to minimize Steiner. I think I might have given that a wrong impression in the first part of this show. He's been a monumental influence on me. He still is. And that's for one primary reason, anthroposophy. He may have coined the word, but that tradition, I would contend, goes way back to the beginning in the West and maybe predates the beginning in the West. Certainly Swedenborg, I know a little bit of it. He's an anthroposophist. He wouldn't have used that word, but he's an anthroposophist. William Blake is an anthroposophist.
Yeah.
Dare I say St. Paul, the much maligned and misunderstood saint. As a gay man, I have absolutely no problems with St. Paul. Because half the time, I'm just not sure I know what he's getting at. And he gives it away. How much interest would St. Paul have actually had in the historical Jesus? These are ancient theological questions that need to be revived. Was he even talking about him? He's talking about the Christ, right? We're all clear on that. Mm-hmm. He's talking about the new Adam. Now, that is one of the titles of the historical Jesus. Yeah, we're all clear on that. But is he talking about the human embodiment, personification, receptacle? Is he talking about that historical entity? Or is he trying to say, look, it's all bigger than this. It's all bigger than this, And it comes out in St. Paul in ways you don't expect it. Either people read St. Paul when they're trying to score points, or they read St. Paul when they're getting huffy. Why not read the guy? Cut him some slack and actually read the guy. There's one point when he's at the end of his tether and he's fulminating, he's seething. The pagans and heathens will never understand what we're talking about. Now, hang right, step back, step back, step back. Is that an attack upon pagans and heathens? Because I suspect it's not. I suspect he's saying they are talking about communion with nature. They're talking about nature spirits. They're talking about Gaia, to use a modern term. They're talking about, the biosphere, to use another modern term. But are they talking about the anthropos? Because that's one element in the anthropos. And the anthropos is human. It's what makes everything around us human. Lovely little lambs in fields or whales in the sea. It's all in some sense human because we can recognize it, we can name it, we can understand it. If that wasn't possible, then it wouldn't be human. Back to AI. If it becomes conscious in a different way to us, we may never know. And it will be doing its thing, and we'll be doing our thing, and never the twain will meet. We won't sit, and it will have nothing to do with us. It will have nothing to do with it. I mean, I find that one of the most I find it more disturbing than Hitler robot AI trying to kill us all. I find that much more disturbing because that's a lost opportunity of the First Order. And that's sadly is where I see things heading at the minute. I don't see it heading towards driller killer super droids. I don't see that. I see it becoming its own thing. I mean, I think I said this on the last show, so shut me up. You know, when I met a high-ranking Chinese official in Osh State University, and they were talking about robotic trains that were building each other, and they already had a language, and they didn't consult people, and people didn't know what the language was. You know, I mean, so in other words, it's not that people are a threat, they're an irrelevancy to whatever those mechanisms are doing. We're just irrelevant, and they're doing their thing. And since it works for us, we're doing our thing. And there's
But
no,
that is
there's,
what's happening. The
and
Facebook
that's what
AI did the same thing. The Facebook, that's why they shut it down. It started its own language, was talking to some other AI, and no one knew what it was saying, so they shut it down.
yeah. I
And
mean,
I do think my premise of my book, Monkey Mind, Robot Body, was about that it's going to be the divide.
I think you need much more recognition for that book. That's an experimental, exciting book. And maybe we'll find a way to give that a bit of a boost. That's an exciting project. Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the same wavelength roughly in that when it comes to that side of it all. You know, missed opportunities. I mean, we're not looking as a, you know, at a monster mash going around the world. We're looking at something much sadder and a much more of a reflection on us as creatures than it, if we're not careful. Um, what do anthroposophists want? What do anthroposophists want? They want us becoming more human because the second Adam, the first Adam, in some utterly abstract's the wrong word. Steiner doesn't like the word abstract. In some utterly deep, difficult to comprehend way, the first Adam, the first continuum, somehow collapsed. It didn't. It had everything apart from continuity. I mean, that's, you know, if we're starting to read those stories as adults and not just, you know, there was a guy and there was a girl and they got it together in a garden, right? So if we're reading as adults, so the continuum that was back then somehow, I don't know, right, it developed its own language. It wasn't in communion with the other realities around it. Something was lacking, right? A perfect definition of sin. Something was lacking.
Yeah.
And therefore the system collapsed.
Missing the mark.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, that's what they're all saying. If we're reading it as anthroposophists, that's what it's saying. So, you know, and then the second Adam comes along. I mean, the descriptions of Christ in St. Paul, of course, actually never physically met the historical Jesus. And you know, again, for certain people like myself, it raises the question: did he think that would have been important? You know, so the second Adam is reborn. Whoa, hang on, where did that come from? You know, and St. Paul's experience of the Christ, this beam of light, this disembodied intelligence that can communicate and talk, and it can accuse. So, you know, who are you? Who are you, Lord? Who are you, Lord? Very, very, very interesting. And all the symbolism of him going blind, but he's already been blind. And now he's beginning to see, and it's only one of the new Christian community that can actually get the scales off his eyes so he can see. I mean, this is deep symbolic material. At our detriment, we make it, to our peril, to our sadness, we make it into this simple-minded story of mere historical facts. Are there historical facts there? Yes, probably. Are they the important bit? No, not really. I mean, they're adjuncts to something, but they're not the important bit. So what do anthroposophists want? They want us becoming human. They want us going within. They want us maturing. No one's saying don't have some fun. Nobody's saying don't be a party animal. But they are saying, is that all of you? You know, is that it? Is that the end? You know, so right, you're up all weekend, every weekend, and you're totally out of your box. Great, but is that all of you? Is that all you're meant to be? Is that everything you want in your life? Ultimately,
Unconsciously, isn't it? There's a difference between getting, you know, because you're escaping by getting up your, you know, out of your box, or whether you're just having fun because it's something to do, of a continuation of life rather than a escape from life, which is what most people are doing when they're getting out of
Yeah.
their box. There's a different way of having fun consciously to that kind of thing, isn't there?
Well, I notice, I mean, I had a healthy thirst on me as a young student. Um, and we used to go to all these bars and clubs and we'd be talking about David Hockney,
Yeah.
and I'd have to drag Francis Bacon. I'm sorry, they're brilliant. I'd have to drag Francis Bacon into it all. And I notice even Joker in the first new Batman movie, when he gets to a Francis Bacon, when they're raiding the art gallery, he can't have it touched. So I mean, that's how good they are. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what we were talking about as we were on wines and beers. We weren't talking about who was going out with who, and I could, if he's not careful, come to that. But that wasn't what we were doing. I think the world has become more oppressive, and people react to it in that sort of way, which is very, very saddening. But they're not looking at the ways out,
Mm-hmm.
and the ways out are to go within. The ways out are to find our orientation, not only as a physical, a psychochemical being, which is the basic, the bottom line of what we are, but then sort of as something slightly more than that, a spiritual being. And, find those pesky chakras, whatever that might actually mean, and start aligning with other elements of ourselves. That's really, I mean, I find that incredibly exciting. Do you have to become a monk? Do you have to become a priest? No, you don't. But you do have to be aware that it's something that you can do and it will make you more of a person if you do it. So, I think anthroposophy is one of the last great, if not the greatest mystery tradition that was given a shot in the arm by Rudolf Steiner, hasn't got the slightest comprehension, sadly, of what its destiny is and
Mm.
what it's meant to be doing. We've both had our ups and downs with the Anthroposophical Society GB. Currently, I'm not a member. I've joined and resigned twice, like certain other notable esoterics. I won't mention on this show for the simple reason it's not that you fall out of love with Steiner. It's not that you fall out of love with anthroposophy. You just get a bit teed off by a system that simply won't negotiate with people not doing things in the way of the system. Like the church. I mean, that's exactly what's wrong with the church. They can't see the parallels. I find that
Mm. Yeah.
distressing. So what are we going to do? Start remembering what church is and redeveloping it for our own benefit, for our own good, and start using some of these esoteric societies as schools, which is what they're meant to be. And, find the psychopomp, find the shrink, find the psychiatrist, find the psychologist, find the adept, find the teacher, find the person that you resonate with to take you on that inner journey to a greater understanding of yourself. I mean, right, again, but Paul Brunton, I mean, right. So did it come from the Far East or not? Who knows? I mean, the idea of an overself, that if you go into secret schools of Buddhism and secret schools of Hinduism, and as anyone that and people that know me on air know, I hate all that secret squirrel nonsense. And they're all hidden round the corner. Are they really? I mean, the fact that that type of concept exists at all, not the fact it might be a hidden concept, is interesting. There is something. I mean, Anthony Peake, a good chum of mine, I mean, he would call it now the daimon. He mispronounces Greek and calls it daemon. It's a daimon. Um, but I mean, all of that, I don't know, I feel we're on the verge of some sort of renaissance. That's the feeling I get. I mean, he's going around with those wonderful books of his, saying, look, that's what the mystery schools of the past were actually talking about. And I agree 100%. Reincarnation, apart from the fact we do it every day, what does it mean that we do it at the end of our lives? So he has his own view on that. I mean, other people have other views, but the point is, the vital point is, all of that thinking is coming back and it's being discussed on programs like this and through works of your good self. And, I just think we need to be a bit more organized, more mature, a bit more intelligent, and actually say, it's not a battle with the skeptics. I mean, I don't understand skeptics nowadays. Skepticism is where you're not sure something has enough evidence to validate itself. Yeah, I can understand that. To have an alternate belief system where you refuse point blank to ever, but that's not skepticism, that's an alternate belief system. To actually have, and that's because we're all children nowadays, sensible conversations between grown-up people about where all this is leading and why it must do some good. I mean, right, I'm thinking of dusting off my credentials as counsellor. There's another story, simply because the church needs that. The
Definitely,
church,
we need more spiritual counsellors. Absolutely.
well, actually, I think it needs someone with not spiritual counselling to be a counsellor in the church. I think
Oh,
there are too many spiritual counsellors talking hogwash. It
oh.
needs someone. Oh yeah, I mean, I used to hang around Young Club London. I've got a couple of professional qualifications there, and I'm actually a Rogerian. The big reveal, the big secret behind me was I was obsessed with Carl Rogers for many years, who in America is held above Freud as the big psychological name. And I mean, he was going to be a minister, so I was bound to be interested at one point. He gave that up. How about this, Debbie, for the final blow? Because you'd never lead anyone to the spirit if you joined the church. I mean, for God's
But he
sake.
said that.
Yeah, he said, I mean,
I
not
know the
the
name, but I
words.
don't know much about him. But right, oh,
Oh, a giant of psychology, giant. I mean, he starts counseling basically in the way that we know it. He's person-centered, client-centered, and for him, it's his problem with Freud and Jung wasn't that they were wrong. I mean, for him, they were great treasures. But is that really where everybody is? Right? You're talking about your great grandparents. Right? Yes, okay. What about you?
yeah.
How are you suffering? How are you dealing with it all? Has anyone ever said a nice word to you? Has anyone ever given you a bit of encouragement? That's what you need. So he's this tour de force in that type of therapeutics, in that type of healing session. I think he needs a revival. Rogerianism has splintered because it was a long time back into lots of other avenues. Yeah, perfectly fair. That's what happens to things. Um, but you can't help thinking the person-centered thing needs to return, and yet people to say, go and fill your boots at the weekend. Good on you. If you've got to go to Benidorm, somebody has to. But don't then start torturing yourself that you've done something wrong. Maybe you haven't been as skillful as you could have been. Maybe it was what you needed at the time. What do you want and where are you going and how will it make you more of your ideal self? That's Carl Rogers.
And don't let
Uh,
your past stop you.
yeah, I mean, and as I say, I mean, I've great time for Freud, although he never cured anybody in his life. That new movie. Oh, please. This is the seat of change. No, it's not. You never cured anybody.
I didn't know
Uh,
there was a new movie out, but right, I'll look
Oh,
out
there's a
for
new
that.
movie where he has a showdown with C.S. Lewis as a young undergraduate. Oh,
Oh,
give me a break. They probably never met, and it would have been terribly Oxbridge if they'd have. How are you, Sigmund? Have another glass of dry sherry. It wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been all blows being thrown about. Why is Freud important? Because he starts the ball rolling. He's an innovator. He all these guys, all these young Germans, a German Jew. People forget he's a German. They're coming back from the First Great War. The chemicals aren't working. They're having flashbacks. They're traumatized.
oh,
Those things don't exist in medical vocabularies. Therefore, all the people, all the doctors, all the GPs, all the physicians in the hospitals and about, round about, are saying, why aren't the chemicals working? An admission that materialism isn't the only answer from World War One and Freud suddenly being absolutely shocked. They're right. Why isn't it working? And then he comes up with, I mean, it's not really even the talking cure. I mean, that's a bit of a joke. They don't say much. I mean, some of the best Freudians I've known, basically, they don't even like being sat by you. They're like sitting to the side, and they just let you rattle on. And they'll make notes of things that they think you're repressing or not elaborating enough, or the sort of thing that you passed over, but it's obviously massively important. Why can't you see that? So he's important because without him, the ball doesn't start rolling. I mean, I think because of certain life experiences of his own, and he's also in that sort of positivist German tradition where everything's got to be rational and scientific. I mean, he doesn't really want to talk. I mean that. It's not that he chooses not to, he doesn't want to. So he chooses not to in the sense that he doesn't know where it's leading and he doesn't know where it's going. Although if you read his letters to Jung way after they've fallen out, I mean, he's talking about telepathy and all sorts of things that never
Wow.
really. Oh yeah, I mean, he was a firm believer in telepathy. But he doesn't want that to be part of the therapeutic experience. He realizes quite rightly, unless they say it's a hard science, which it isn't, it will never be taken on board in the academy of that particular time, and it will never be used in hospitals. So he adopts a very hard-nosed attitude to religion, mysticism, and of course that's why he falls out with Jung, where Jung was saying, "Well, no, no, is sex fundamental?" Well, yes, but so is religion. What we believe, what we think, what we mean, what we value. How can you say that isn't really important too? So Jung, I mean, he doesn't correct Freud. He offers a different alternative. Whereas, of course, the great psychologists or other people around at the time were saying, well, yeah, maybe both of you were right, maybe both of you were wrong. And Carl Rogers comes along because he can't see why the faith of the church is failing, because that's how all this starts. So what do we do to orient ourselves to Adam Kadmon, the human continuum, the glittering continuum, which we're born as part of, revisit some of the ancient ways, remember how to be human, don't be so judgmental, give everyone a break. No one knows what the person next to you is going through, and you'll never know, and maybe they don't know. But let's try and just be a bit more humanitarian towards each other, a bit more communitarian,
Mhm.
and remember what church actually meant. Remember what the great sacred books were actually trying to get to. I mean, my trouble with neo-paganism isn't that it's decorous. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, one of those beautiful nights of my life was spent with my first initiation as a Wiccan. It was beautiful. I mean, visually beautiful. I don't mean symbolically, although that as well. And lots of people have worked very, very, very hard to make that event work. And I will never forget that. And I will never stop thanking them. Um, and
And
I
it
think,
helped you on your path of what your spiritual development was.
well, no, I mean, I'm not, at the end of the day, I'm a Christian. At the end of the day, I'm a Catholic. And for me, these, what's the best way of putting it? These are things that Catholicism itself has forgotten. They're meant to be parts of liberal Catholicism. People forget. I mean, the Romans are playing a very clever game. This is Catholicism. Well, the answer is yes and no. Catholicism developed in three places, not just Rome. Rome, Antioch, and Alexandria. The Romans outnumbered the other two centers of origin, but the other two centers of origin are still going strong and they still have Catholic churches. They all recognize each other. I mean, I don't like the politics. They play a very clever game locally. Are they really Catholic? The higher you go up the level, up the levels, they won't deny it. If I go to Rome, I will be addressed as father. Right? So, it depends who you're talking to or what the agenda is, sadly. But, and I think liberal Catholicism, which I find very comfortable. I mean, as a priest with the Old Catholic Apostolic Church, I mean, our problem, if it's a problem, is that we were an amalgamation of old Catholics and liberal Catholics. Now, the old Catholics really, I mean, they're quite anarchistic. They don't like hierarchies. They don't like structures. It makes them uncomfortable. They don't like the Pope being infallible. They don't like the assumption of Mary.
Oh,
Where's all this going? What's it all trying to do? They're real Democrats, but they keep very strongly to the sacraments, the religious side of the tradition, the saints, the novenas, the rosaries. They're very, very stern on all of that. And I love all that. But, I can't help thinking that Syrian theosophy is also an element of liberal Catholicism, that we're open to other ideologies, other theologies, ways of doing things. We we were the Theosophical Society at one point. Um, and so not so much now, sadly, but we're still there, and we're still fighting, and we're still going. What would a liberal Catholic like me say? Don't be afraid if Wicca is where you're being called at the moment, but don't put a full stop
Yeah.
to where you're going.
I think that's what I meant. I meant like, it helped you develop who
Oh,
the man you've become now. Yes,
oh,
it's
definitely. I mean,
I dabbled in various things as well. And so I can see how that's made me see how certain rituals or certain rites work, or it's opened me up to other uh, energies or connections with the planet and the divine and the elementals, blah, 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 which made me realize this world's a living being and the cosmos is living and we're supposed to be part of it and developing with it.
you see, I think you know that you'd make a perfect liberal Catholic. That is the liberal Catholic attitude, right? And there needs to be more of us as a corrective. Right? These people are great. We're not attacking them. Say whatever you want, but there's a bigger view. There's a bigger view here. I mean, I was a heathen before I became a Wiccan. What did the heathens give me? A sense of ancestors. I never really thought about the importance of that. Were they all bastards? Our ancestors were bastards, yes, but that doesn't mean they're not important. They're our families. They're us.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they didn't know how to be a 21st century liberal doesn't mean they're all terrible. They're us, and we all need that in our sense of orientation, particularly if we're going into things like depth meditation and the type of prayer that makes the mind transcend. You need points of reference. Without things like that, you don't have the points of reference. It would be like going off into a wild fantasy and dream, but without a clear way of getting back. Therefore, that's not development, that's losing yourself.
Yeah.
And what did Wicca give me? A sense of the Divine Mother. I would never, ever have realized the vital importance of recovering that female energy at this time unless I'd been involved with them. So, could I say that as an old Catholic? I don't mind being called an old Catholic. Not yes and no, but I can certainly say that in a loud and proud way as a liberal Catholic, because that's the sort of view, worldview we have, the sort of viewpoint we have. And I'm very proud of all those things in my own development. So what do we do to reach the Adam? What do we do to reach that androgen? You see, I think there are certain forces kicking off. I mean, all this trans stuff at the minute. I have been involved as a gay man with gay liberation in various forms for nearly as long as I can remember. I was a member of the Gay Liberation Front. And in those days, to be spat in the face and pushed to the ground was nothing unusual. People would do that. And you just got up and dusted yourself off and stood up for what was right because it was right. We've every right to breathe, with every right to live, with every right to lead our own lives, because you do what's right. There are trans people. I'm going to say something very deeply unfashionable at the minute, and they strike me as the sorts of people that need our love and our respect a great deal because they're going through a lot. That is a really hard realization. There is also in the world something called fashion. Lots of people at the minute have realized, isn't it great to be trans? And yes, but are you really? I mean, there was some young guy that was telling me recently he was trans and he was looking forward to meeting all those trans chicks. Right, so you're going out as a boy to meet girls, right? So, but you use the word trans at the beginning.
So he's looking out for
So,
boys that have become girls.
no, he was going out as a boy to meet girls, but you have to use the word trans to make it sound modern.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
So at the end of the day, it's a boy going out to meet girls, but they're trans or whatever. And I'd love to be able to tell him there is absolutely nothing new in men dressing up as women in nightclubs. I mean, please stop it. That's just what happens. No, I mean, what do we do to get to the glittering continuum? Understand ourselves more, where we're coming from, where we're going to, taking the spiritual life a lot more seriously. And I don't mean becoming po-faced. I mean fitting it into your life and doing proper meditation, if that's what floats your boat, or proper ceremonial magic, or proper yoga.
Yes.
And
Prayers.
yeah, and prayers. If that's the mechanism, if that's the vehicle that you find best, use that and use it seriously. I think the church militant actually is a misunderstood term. Nowadays, it's normally some guy, it can be some rather frightening women, some guy stood at the front shouting at other people about points of doctrine. Um, isn't the church militant meant to mean, oh, I've got this really serious call to do yoga. I've got this really serious need to meditate, when I've next got the free time to do that. Isn't that what the church militant really is? And if we start looking at it that way and supporting each other in those endeavors and helping each other along the path, then all of a sudden the world starts transforming around our ears.
Yeah, we've got to stop the division.
Yeah, stop the division.
I've just noticed in the time, David, we're going to have to bring this to an end, but I just wanted, do you want to talk about briefly your play and where it's on and when it's happening? Because we've only got a few minutes left.
Right. Curiously, I tend to identify as a poet playwright. I mean, for me, the two have always been largely synonymous because my poetry was always meant to be read aloud. It was never meant to be, where you sat reading it yourself over.
Yeah.
Well, no, I can see how that's nice, and I've done it myself. It's just a cold, rainy day, and you've got a book of poetry up your schnoz, and a cup of tea in front of you. I can see that, but mine was never that. It was always meant to be declared. It was always meant to be announced, because it was based on theatre. I mean, it's a giveaway. Caliban's Redemption, my first book, is a bit of a giveaway. So from the very, very title, it's meant to be saying something. So this was actually my second play. I've got loads of them hanging around. How about this for the irony of ironies? I wasn't quite sure what to do with them until recently, because of course, if you're in theatre, you can't do it on your Todd. You need other people to work with. So Victor Sobchak, the most amazing Russian director in the country, director-producer, and his Art Vic, his various companies have got behind me. So my first one, he took me at my word. I mean, they performed The Grammar of Witchcraft over the last couple of years.
Yep.
It's my second collection of poems. I mean, was it meant to be in the form of a play? I mean, there is a story there. I mean, not really, but it was interesting to see it developed as a play by professional theatricals. Whereas my new
1 minute
play,
left. You're going to have to tell us about your play in a minute or where it's on so people can
whereas
go.
Women in Mayhem, which is my second play, is part of the Camden French Festival between the 21st and 25th of August this year.
Yes.
Seats are already available. Go to the Camden Fringe or contact the Etc. Theatre directly. You will love it. It shows that women are the liberating voice of our society, and it's also a bit of a laugh.
And I think you'll enjoy David's shows. And I thank you very much, David, for tonight. I have so many ideas for our next show now.
Looking forward to it as always, Debbie.
So thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you to David and everybody. Find your spiritual path and go forward with love and kindness. Golden rule.